Okay, hello again everybody, this is Mr. Steele, and I'm here to discuss and work through Term 3 Standard Quiz Question number 6 for Algebra 1 at Franklin High School, which the directions are simply to simplify, but which always involve a zero or negative exponent expression. So everything on Standard Quiz Question number 6 is going to involve either a zero exponent or a negative exponent, and then simplifying from there. So there are going to be a couple varieties that kind of come up in here, a couple different kinds of problems that show up. But for the most part, where we need to start is just kind of getting an understanding of both zero and negative exponents. So I'm going to take some space. And again here, I'm not going to focus on why these things are true necessarily the same way as I did when we actually taught it in the beginning of the year. I'm just going to focus on how to actually use them. So starting with zero exponents. Zero exponents are actually a really nice thing because they're very simple. Basically, if you've got some expression to the zero power, no matter what that stuff is, it's stuff to the zero power, that's going to be equal to 1. Doesn't matter what the stuff is. It could be anything. You could have, 2x squared plus 3xy to the 5th, all to the zero power. That's going to be 1. Or you could have, Mount Kilimanjaro to the 0th power. It's still going to be equal to 1. Now the only exception is 0 to the 0 power does not equal 1. We just say that doesn't exist. But, we're not going to do that to you. We're not going to trick you here. We're going to give you something that you can actually use this fact for. So, as I said, again, I'll do full examples in just a second. But if you have some expression, like say, if you got something like this, so 3x squared, y to the 5th, w to the 144th power, just making stuff up. If it's taken to the 0 power, yeah, it's equal to 1. So that's a thumbs up if the perspective's kind of hard to tell. So this is actually a really nice thing, and I'll show you in the examples in just a few minutes some ways that this makes simplifying expressions really easy. Okay, so that was zero exponents. So that's zero exponents make something equal to 1. Negative exponents are a little bit tougher. Negative exponents basically tell you to take a reciprocal. And again, we talked about why this works, and we gave you some ways to remember it. But basically, if we go back to the original kind of way we brought these up, a to the negative m power is going to be the same thing as 1 over a to the positive m power. So notice the exponent itself, the magnitude of it, m, doesn't change. All that changes is that negative can be rewritten as a positive by dropping it down. Or conversely, if you had it down here, if you had 1 over a to the negative m, this would swing back up and become a to the positive m. So those two facts are true. Now, for the most part on the standard quizzes, we're going to focus on this one, and actually have you simplify expressions like that. So for example, just as like a simple, straightforward example, maybe I have 2 to the negative 3rd power, and they want me to simplify that. Well, if I follow the patterns here, it's going to take a reciprocal, so this will be 1 over 2 to the positive 3rd power, and 2 to the 3rd power is just 2 times 2 times 2, which is 2 times 4, or 8. So 2 to the negative 3rd power would be equal to 1/8. Okay, so that's kind of our introduction. So now let's get into a couple problems. Alrighty, so let's take a look at an example here of using zero exponents first. Maybe I'll do 1 or 2, depending on the situation. So I'm going to try and mimic the ways that they come up on the standard quiz so we can really take a look at that. So let's see, let's go with okay, so this might be an expression you're asked to simplify on standard quiz question number 6. So what they want you to do is they want you to just use your exponent rules, so use what you know about zero exponents. Now when you look at this, it might seem like it's kind of complicated because you've got this expression in parentheses taken to a 0 power, you've got this other stuff on the outside, but let's be smart about this. We know that zero exponents just tell us that it's going to be something to the first, or it's just going to be equal to 1. So anything to the 0 power, except for 0, is equal to 1. So when I look here, this is my stuff. Like this thing inside here, it's just stuff. So stuff to the 0 power, that's all equal to 1. That whole thing is. So this whole thing, it just becomes 5x squared y times 1. And that's just equal to 5x squared y. So in fact, the only part that actually mattered here was this stuff on the outside, because the rest was inside a parenthesis taken to the 0 power. Okay, again, so let's look at just one more. Again, I'm just making these up as I go, so sometimes it takes a little bit. Okay, there we go. So a little bit involved. Negative 3y to the 5th, w to the 8th power, times the quantity x to the 4th, y, z to the 3rd, all to the 0, times 3x squared. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is to kind of speed up this process. I'm going to start by recognizing that this guy is just stuff being taken to the 0 power. So that's just going to go away. It's going to be equal to 1. So, and anything times 1 is still itself by the identity property of multiplication. So now all I'm left with is negative 3, y to the 5th, w to the 8th, times the stuff hiding over here, 3x squared. And now, just like I would on standard quiz questions, I believe it's 4 or 5, I've just got to take the numbers together and combine them. So negative 3 times 3 is going to be negative 9. I've got an x squared, a y to the 5th, and a w to the 8th. So there is my final answer. So a little bit extra bonus exponent practice for you. Okay, so that would be 2 examples like the kinds you see on standard quizzes for standard quiz question number 6, where there's a 0 exponent. Okay, so now let's move on to the negative exponents. So let's see what we could get here. So I know for a fact that there are a couple different ways that these might come up, so I'm going to try and cover both of them. So let's start off with my trusty Sharpie. There it is. Let's start off with example. Let's go with so something like this. You might be asked to simplify 3y in parentheses to the negative 2 power, or the quantity 3y to the negative 2 power. Okay, so where I want to start is we've got to pay close attention to what is being taken to a negative power. So here I've got parentheses, so this whole thing is being taken to the negative 2 power. So when I rewrite this, I've got to bring the entire thing with it. So this will be 3y. I'm going to keep my parentheses down there. I want to make sure I don't forget them. All squared. So 1 over 3y squared. So this gets rid of the negative exponent. Now in order to simplify this, realize that 3y squared just means 3y times 3y. Nothing fancy there. That's just the definition of something squared. X squared is x times x. 3y squared is 3y times 3y. Now in order to finish, I've just got to correctly multiply these two monomials together. So 3 times 3 is 9. Y times y is y squared. And lo and behold, there is my answer. 1 over 9y squared. Okay, so that's just one example. So let's look at a second one, maybe a little bit trickier, kind of throw it at you. And again, you can always feel free on these videos to pause it after I write down the problem, try it yourself and check to see if you did it right, or listen to my explanation, or you can just listen to it. So let's see, let's go with let's go with this one. So in this problem, again, there's a negative exponent, but before we even look at that, we've got to be careful and look at what is being taken to that negative exponent. So right here, all I see is x to the negative 3rd. There's no parentheses here. It doesn't say the quantity 4x to the negative 3rd. So that means that this is really going to be 2 pieces I look at. 4 times x to the negative 3rd. So I'm going to imagine there's a little multiplication sign in there so that I can see that they're 2 separate factors that I'm looking at. And now x to the negative 3rd, well, using what I've done before, that's just going to be 1 over x to the positive 3rd power. And so that's great. We've now gotten rid of the negative exponent. It's something we can work with. Now, if you're not sure what to do from here, technically you have found the right expression, you just haven't simplified it all the way. So what I can do is I would say just multiply across, but for some of you fractions can be kind of tough. So imagine this 4 as just 4 over 1. Okay, now, in order to multiply these two fractions together, 4 over 1 times 1 over x cubed, we just multiply across. 4 times 1 is going to be 4. 1 times x to the third is just going to be x to the third. And my final answer is 4 over x to the third power. And so there we go. We've seen a couple different ways that these negative exponents can kind of pop in, as well as earlier a couple different ways that the zero exponents can pop in. So again, I know that was a brief overview, but hopefully that helps you tackle question number 6 on the standard quiz. Hopefully it's been informative, and have a good night.